For 300 years, Earth was silent. The galaxy moved on. Humanity was forgotten until today. Now the stars are trembling because something is coming, and it remembers everything. Before we begin, if you're drawn to stories of lost civilizations' epic returns and humanity rewriting its destiny among the stars, make sure you're subscribed. This is one you won't forget. Commander Rylan Kale stood before the fractured viewport of the Starseed Ark, watching the crimson twilight bleed across the skies of Virilia Prime. The planet had sheltered 3,000 souls for half a century, but it never embraced them. It wasn't home, not truly. Home was a distant sapphire orb dancing around a sun they hadn't seen in 300 years. Home was Earth, and Earth had gone quiet. He pressed a weathered palm to the freezing alloy wall beside him. Another rotation. Another day clawing toward survival. The harvests were dying, again, despite Dr. Alira Ven's latest attempts to stabilize the hybrid soil. The filtration towers groaned for parts they no longer had the means to forge. And worse still, the Dravik marauders had resurfaced near the fringe mines. "Commander Kale, report to Central," came the voice of Narrowin, sharp through the comm line. She had managed comms for the last 5 years, ever since her parents were vaporized in the last Dravik raid. At just 23, she was one of the youngest bridge officers he'd ever served with. But she was unshakable. Rylan paced briskly down the tight passageways of the vessel. Starseed Ark had been a marvel once, back when she left orbit above Earth 2 centuries ago. Now she bore the weight of time, oxidized scars crawling down the walls where scrubbers failed, power flickers from unstable capacitors. Every system held together by jury-rigged scraps and stubborn faith. The command bay was small, claustrophobic. Nara sat at her console, sunlight catching the golden strands of her tied-back hair. Her fingers flew across ancient controls. Behind her stood Marek Dahl, their lead mechanic, Amy's age, shipborn, and tempered by hardship. For them, Earth was a bedtime myth whispered by the elders. "What are we facing?" Rylan asked. Nara turned. Her emerald eyes held dread. Long-range echo shows 3 Dravik warcraft inbound. ETA. 6 hours. Rylan's chest tightened. 3 ships meant 3 warlords and their battalions. The Dravik, scaled giants bred for destruction, stood over 7 feet tall with talons like plasma-forged blades. War was their language. To them, humans were a resource. Or prey. "How many can we field?" he asked, voice low. Marek glanced down at his data slab. 200, if we include everyone over 16. But most of them? They've never held a weapon. They're engineers. Growers. Not fighters. Rylan gave a slow, grim nod. When Earth fell silent, its children scattered across the stars. Some settlements had gone dark without a whisper. Others, like theirs, had simply refused to die. Some had been taken in chains. Others, like this colony, had endured by vanishing into the stars. But every sanctuary eventually ran out of shadows. Dr. Ven, report to command. Rylan called over comms. Alira Ven stepped onto the bridge moments later. Mid-40s, streaks of silver threading through chestnut hair. Her presence carried weight. She'd led the science corps longer than Rylan had been alive. She also held the rare burden of first-hand memories of oceans, forests, and blue skies on a world no one had seen in centuries. "Alira, where do we stand on defense?" he asked. She exhaled through her nose. "Shields are drained 30%, maybe less. Weapons? Half of them are down. We're missing modules we haven't been able to replicate in years. If 3 Dravik cruisers engage us, we'll be ash in 10 minutes. Rylan eased into the command seat, his grandfather's chair, then his father's. 3 generations of Kales had clung to the edge of survival here. Sometimes he wondered if all they'd done was delay the inevitable. "What about the outer enclaves?" he asked Nara. Any response from Haven's Reach or Calder's Refuge? Her face went pale. Haven's Reach stopped transmitting 14 days ago. Calder sent a priority distress beacon 3 nights back. Then nothing. A heavy silence fell across the deck. The implications hung there, unspoken. The Dravok weren't just hunting. They were cleansing the void of the last freeborn humans. Colony by colony. Soon, they'd finish what they started. Ryland scanned the weary faces of his bridge crew. They still looked to him for solutions. But there was no clear path left. The Starseed Ark couldn't outrun a Dravok fleet. Its weapons were pitiful by comparison. And as for hiding, there were no dark corners left in this arm of space. There might be one path we haven't taken, Elira said softly. Ryland turned to her. What is it? We could try reaching Origin. Everything stopped. Not a sound. Not a breath. Marek spoke first. Origin's gone silent. For 300 years. You know the stories. Everyone does. It's dead. Elira shook her head. No. We only know they stopped answering. That's not the same. Nara turned slowly to her panel. I've kept tabs on the Sol region for half a decade. There's never been any transmission, any sign. Lack of response doesn't mean absence, Elira interrupted. Maybe they stopped talking. Maybe they had reasons. Ryland leaned back. She was right. The truth was, no one really knew what had happened on Earth. One day, it had simply fallen silent. Trade convoys stopped appearing. Data relays went dark. Quantum relays that once lit up the galaxy like constellations blinked out. Earth became a ghost. The so-called Dominion Council, now ruled by the Dravok overlords and their crystalline allies, the Zalari, had written humanity off, declared them gone, extinct. The Dominion had carved up human territory like scavengers at a feast. The last flickering colonies, like Kales, were labeled irrelevant, crumbs of a failed race. But what if Earth hadn't perished? What if it still breathed, veiled in silence for reasons unknown? What if Origin's still alive? Ryland asked quietly, still listening, just not answering. Elira approached Nara's console. The quantum lattice relays still exist. They were built to span the entirety of human-occupied space. If they're out there, they'll hear us, she said. And if they aren't, Marek cut in, we'll burn power reserves we can't afford to lose. Ryland turned from them and walked back toward the main viewport. Beyond it, Virilia's red sun dipped beneath the jagged horizon, bleeding orange fire across the sky. Within hours, the Dravok warships would arrive. Either they die or be dragged away in chains. 3 centuries of survival, buried in one final battle. Unless Origin was still out there, unless home was still listening, he faced them again, his voice steady. Send the transmission. Nara's fingers danced over the dust-covered controls of the quantum relay array. The machine groaned as ancient power lines surged with energy, systems dormant for decades roaring back to life. The transmitter was older than any of them, built in an age when Earth still spoke to its children. Now, it might be the last lifeline they had. Energy flow is stable, Marek reported from engineering. But this load is massive. If it fails, we'll have nothing left for shielding when they arrive. Ryland stood behind Nara, eyes fixed on the flickering display. How long until it reaches Earth? He asked. Elira, tablet in hand, ran the numbers. Roughly 6 hours through folded space. The same time we have left, Nara whispered. Dravok ships hit orbit in 6. She turned to him. What should I say? He hesitated. What could you say to a world that had fallen silent for 300 years? What words reached across a chasm of time, of grief, of absence? Keep it clear, he said softly. Tell them who we are. Tell them we need them. Nara nodded. Then she began to type. Her message was simple, heavy. This is Ark Vessel Starseed, transmitting from the Virilia system. We are the last known human colony in this sector, under assault by Dravik warships. If Origin still stands, if anyone hears this, please respond. We need you." She pressed the final key. The core lit up with a pulse of cobalt light as the ancient relay screamed to life. The signal tore into quantum space, faster than light, faster than thought, racing toward the forgotten cradle of humanity. The signal screamed through the Orally system, racing faster than comprehension, propelled by fractured spacetime itself. "It's gone," Nara whispered. "The transmission's out." Now they waited. The next hours crawled by like a funeral march. Rylan tried to keep morale intact, but everyone understood this wasn't a fight they could win. Their defenses were relics, their weapons barely functional, and the Dravik warships loomed closer by the minute. In engineering, Marek worked without pause, hands blackened with grease and plasma scoring. "Shields are holding at 40%, he called out. "That's the best we're going to get without a full grid overhaul." Elira led the evacuation protocols, guiding families and elders to the reinforced core of the starseed. Hidden chambers layered in dense alloys offered the illusion of safety. But if the Dravik broke through, nowhere would be safe. Nara stayed at her post, eyes locked to the receiver interface. Waiting, praying. Only the metronomic pings of a long-range scanner reminded them time hadn't stopped, just their hope. Then, 5 hours after they launched their message into the void, everything changed. Nara's console flared to life in a riot of sound and color. Warning chimes echoed across the bridge. Systems spiked into overload. "I've got something," she gasped, disbelief cracking her voice. Picking up quantum resonance from the Orally system. Massive. Rylan lunged to her station. "What is it?" Her hands danced across the controls. "I don't know, it's astronomical. Captain, this signal is like watching a sun ignite. It's overwhelming our receivers." The forward display stuttered and flashed before stabilizing into the quantum imprint of the incoming transmission. The energy signature alone was destabilizing their processors. Systems built for a quieter age buckled under the weight of whatever had just answered them. And then, through the static, a voice. "This is Admiral Kalen Sorrell of the Terran Ascendancy Fleet." Silence fell across the bridge like gravity. No one moved. No one breathed. Earth had answered. 3 centuries of silence shattered in a single sentence. The voice continued, steady and resolute, vibrating with command and strength. "To all remaining human outposts, stand firm. The stars belong to us again. Reinforcements are en route. You are not alone." Rylan's knees almost gave way. He gripped the edge of Nara's console, heart pounding. "The Ascendancy Fleet," he whispered. Elira's eyes widened, filled with awe. "They're alive." Earth never fell. Marek stared at the diagnostic feed. "Captain, these power readings, the surge we're seeing, it's beyond anything I've ever encountered. It's not just a fleet, it's an armada. That kind of transmission shouldn't exist," Marek whispered, eyes wide. "You'd need the raw output of a star to push a signal that powerful." Nara was already working the interface. "There's more, signal still live. I'm boosting filtration." Then the voice returned, clearer now, resonating through every speaker on the bridge with unshakable authority. "This broadcast is intended for all Terran descendants within former Alliance territories," Admiral Sorrell's voice declared. "We've watched your trials. We've borne witness to your survival. While the galaxy turned away, we endured, and we evolved. The moment has come. We are reclaiming what is ours." Rylan turned toward his crew. No one spoke. No one blinked. Every face was frozen, wrapped with awe, hearts igniting with something most of them hadn't felt in years. Hope. The Admiral's voice surged again. And this time it wasn't just a beacon, it was personal. "To the crew of Ark Vessel Starseed," she said, and Rylan's breath hitched. She was speaking to them. Your distress call was received. Dravik ships are closing on your coordinates. Do not engage. Remain stationary. Reinforcements inbound. Arrival in 47 minutes. Nara looked up from her console, tears brimming in her eyes. They're coming for us. Earth is coming for us. Though the transmission ceased, the core still pulsed with quantum fire. Earth hadn't vanished again. No, she was speaking, alive and unrelenting, calling to her forgotten children scattered across the void. Rylan activated internal comms. His voice, once weary, now rang with a strength born of revelation. "This is Commander Kale to all hands aboard the Starseed," he said. "What I'm about to tell you will reshape everything you've ever believed. Contact has been made. Earth is alive. And they're coming." His words echoed through bulkheads and corridors, finding their way into every heart. Gasps turned to cheers. Stoic colonists wept openly. Generations raised on second-hand stories now knew the truth. The cradle of humanity was real and reaching for them. In the med bays, the grow chambers, and even the cold metal of the lower decks, people shouted and hugged and cried. Earth, long thought a myth, was more than memory. It was home, and it had not forgotten them. But Rylan couldn't ignore the unease curling in his chest. There'd been something strange in Admiral Sorrell's tone. Not just authority, something beyond human. The kind of resolve forged not in peace, but in something vast and unknowable. And the energy readings, still off the scale, defied every natural law they understood. What had Earth become during its centuries of silence? What kind of power now moved beneath its skies? As Rylan stared into the infinite black beyond the viewport, he couldn't help but wonder if the answer was coming faster than they were ready for. Because at that very moment, on the dot, Nara sensors chimed. The Dravik ships had arrived. Right on cue, they came. 3 Titanic warships tore from subspace at the edge of the Virilia system, monsters cloaked in jagged armor and bristling with weaponry. Each vessel dwarfed the Starseed by miles, their hulls plated with serrated alloy and fusion lances that could rupture moons. Commander Rylan Kale stared at the tactical feed. 30 minutes. That's all the time they had until Earth's promised arrival. 30 minutes to survive the impossible. "Incoming hail from the Dravik flagship," Nara reported. "Patch it through," Rylan said. The screen sputtered, then locked onto the enemy bridge. There, towering above a throne of alloy thorns, stood War Chieftain Zalzeth, a reptilian colossus with slit pupils and serrated fangs. His skin was cross-hatched with ceremonial scars, each marking a conquest. "Terran vessel," he hissed, his words fractured and guttural. "You will yield. Your crew will be broken. You belong to the Dominion now. Resist and die." Rylan stepped forward. "This is Commander Kale of the Starseed. We are under Terran Ascendancy protection. Vacate this system. Now." Zalzeth snarled, a sound like steel grinding glass. "Earth," he spat. "The corpse world?" Still whispering that myth. "Earth hasn't spoken in 3 centuries. It is ash drifting." "Earth has awakened," Rylan said. "Their fleet is en route." The Dravik leader bared his teeth in something twisted, almost a grin. "Then we'll crush them too. You have 5 minutes. Surrender or be erased." The feed cut. On the bridge, the tension thickened like pressure before a storm. Marek's hands flew over engineering panels. "Shields won't last 5 minutes," he muttered. Elira kept scanning their depleted systems, calculating and recalculating failure points. Nara was still glued to her sensors. 28 minutes until contact," she whispered. Rylan was about to give the order to prepare for final engagement when alarms screamed to life across the console. "Captain, something's happening." Nara shouted. "Report." "I'm detecting enormous power surges across the entire system." The main screen shifted, displaying the Virilia sector from high orbit. Dozens, No hundreds of anomalies began blinking into existence across the grid. They weren't exiting subspace. They were simply appearing. What the hell are those? Ryland demanded. Nara was typing furiously. They're not using conventional drives. They're just manifesting. Then he saw them. Ships, unlike any craft ever conceived by human or alien minds. They moved like phantoms, shimmering with elegance. Their hulls flowed like liquid silver, shaped in graceful curves that caught and twisted the starlight. It was impossible to focus on them, like the eye refused to believe they were real. Sleek, silent, infinite. 50 of them. No more. 100, Nara whispered, almost reverently. Stunned silence gave way to gasps across the Starseed's bridge. The unknown fleet had encircled the Dravik Armada like wolves surrounding prey. On board the enemy flagship, War Chieftain Zalzeth roared incoherent orders, his clawed hands slashing through the air. Even the hardened Dravik warriors, veterans of 100 sieges, froze at the sight. These Terran vessels defied everything they knew. No visible thrusters, no heat signatures. They turned without inertia, hovered without propulsion, and shimmered as though half-anchored in another dimension. A fresh transmission cut through the chaos, and Ryland instantly recognized the voice. Commander Zalzeth of the Dravik Imperium, Admiral Kalen Sorrel said with icy calm, "You have violated sovereign Terran space. You are ordered to disengage and withdraw, or suffer the consequences." The display shifted again, revealing the Terran flagship. It was colossal, nearly triple the size of Zalzeth's dreadnought, but its presence wasn't just size. It moved like a living thing, its gleaming hull bending starlight, every curve elegant and deliberate. Then Sorrel herself appeared on screen. She looked young 40s, perhaps, with sharp-cut brown hair and ocean-hued eyes that hid vast depths Ryland couldn't begin to fathom. "I am Admiral Kalen Sorrel, commander of the Ascendancy Fleet," she said, voice steady. "This colony is under our protection. Depart now, and no harm will come to you." Zalzeth's image reappeared, seething with defiance. "You do not frighten us, Terran. We are the Imperium. We have broken empires." Sorrel's response was quiet, final. "That ends now." What followed defied all logic. The Dravik opened fire, plasma lances, antimatter projectiles, high-yield fusion torpedoes, all weapons blazing in synchronized fury. The void lit up like a dying star. Enough ordnance to raise planets bore down on the Terran fleet. None of it struck. The Terran ships didn't raise shields. They didn't counterfire. They simply existed outside the rules. Plasma veered off course mid-flight. Missiles slowed, twisted, turned around, and rocketed back toward their launchers. Beam weapons bent like light through water. Marek's jaw dropped. "This isn't tech. I don't even have language for this." Alira stared at the sensor data, eyes wide. "They're not resisting the attack. They're rewriting the rules around it." Sorrel's voice returned, unshaken. "Commander Rian Voss, demonstrate local field manipulation." Another voice answered, smooth and precise. "Affirmative, Admiral. Engaging gravitational compression." Ryland watched frozen, as the void near the Dravik ships began to ripple, space folding like silk in unseen hands. The enemy vessels, millions of tons of armored metal, started drifting. Not by choice. Their engines flared, struggling, but the ships drifted toward each other. They couldn't escape. "Cease this." Zalzeth howled over comms. "What sorcery is this?" "Not sorcery," Admiral Sorrel replied. "Just science beyond your reach." A third voice entered, calm and clinical. "This is Dr. Lyra Voss. Allow me to clarify exactly what you're experiencing. You're currently inside a stabilized gravity shell," said the calm, disembodied voice. "We've compressed the quantum weave around your ships. Your weapons are non-functional because local physics no longer obey your engineering. Your engines can't respond because we now govern the fabric of space." The Dravik warships, once mighty instruments of destruction, now floated helpless, compressed into a tight formation, powerless. Their weapon systems were frozen. Their hulls groaned under invisible pressure. But their crews remained unharmed. "This is your final notice," Admiral Sorrell said evenly. "Depart from Terran space. Do not return. Spread the truth through your empire. Earth has returned, and we protect our own." Zalzetha's reply came through, no longer proud, no longer angry, but broken. "We yield, we will go, just let us leave." And just like that, the pressure vanished. The Dravik ships broke formation, their engines flaring with desperation. They fled toward the edge of the system at full thrust, as if the stars themselves were chasing them. Ryland stood motionless, struggling to comprehend what he'd witnessed. In less than 10 minutes, the Terran fleet had dismantled 3 warships, without firing a single weapon. Admiral Sorrell's image returned to the Starseed's main display. This time, her expression held something unexpected, a quiet smile. "Commander Kale, this is Admiral Kalen Sorrell," she said, "requesting permission to board. We have much to discuss." He finally found his voice. "Permission granted, Admiral, and welcome home." As he spoke, the reality hit him. Nothing would ever be the same. Earth hadn't simply returned, it had transcended. The old world had vanished into silence 3 centuries ago. What had come back was something greater. Something changed. But what would that mean for the galaxy? A moment later, Admiral Sorrell appeared on the bridge. Not via shuttle, not through a transporter array. One moment, the space beside him was empty. The next, it wasn't. She stood there, as if she'd always been there, calm and real and impossible. "Commander Kale," she said warmly, offering her hand. "It's good to meet you in person." He took it. Her grip was solid, real, and yet something about her defied description. "How did you?" "Phase modulation," she replied simply. "We operate across layered dimensional fields now. Physical barriers are mostly irrelevant to us." Dr. Alira then stepped forward, her eyes wide with wonder. "Admiral, what happened to Earth? How did we become this?" The Admiral's smile faded into gravity. 3 centuries ago, we stood at a crossroads. We could struggle onward, bound by old limits, or we could evolve past them. We chose evolution. Admiral Sorrell turned toward the viewport, her gaze fixed on the silver-lit fleet hanging silently in the void, each vessel like a star frozen in mid-thought. "We uncovered something the rest of the galaxy still fears to acknowledge," she said softly. "Consciousness and matter are entwined, inseparable at the quantum layer. Understanding that changed everything." Nara looked up from her comm station, stunned. "You mean you can move matter with your mind?" "In essence," Sorrell replied. "But it's deeper than simple thought. We learned to commune with the underlying quantum field, the thread that binds all of existence. Every human on Earth now lives both as a physical form and as a quantum resonance." Marek's eyes darted across his readouts, his voice hushed. "I don't understand these readings. Your ships are pulling energy from nowhere, power that doesn't register in any spatial dimension." A voice came through the Starseed's bridge from the Terran flagship, calm, crisp, and authoritative. "Commander Rian Voss," it said, "we're drawing from vacuum resonance, the zero field between atoms. A sea of latent energy far greater than any star. We simply learned how to open the tap." Rylan felt the full weight of it settle over him. "So, everyone on Earth can do this now." "In time," Sorrell said, "all of humanity, wherever they've survived, will share in it. That's why we're here, to unify what was scattered, to bring our people home." Before he could speak again, alarm screamed from Nara's console. "Captain, long-range sensors just lit up. We've got a massive fleet incoming." Sorrell didn't flinch. "The Galactic Concord is reacting to our return. They're throwing everything they have at us." On the central screen, the tactical map shifted. Ryland saw it, an approaching wall of ships. Hundreds. Dravik dreadnoughts. Chrysalline crystal-forged spires. High fleet carriers. Vessels from a dozen species, their lights flaring like knives in the dark. A force beyond comprehension. "They're afraid," Sorrel said, still perfectly composed. "For 300 years, they split up Terran space. Enslaved colonies. Annihilated resistance. Now they fear what we've become. They assume we've returned to avenge ourselves." A new voice chimed in from the fleet. Dr. Lyra Voss again. "Admiral, confirmed scan. Over 800 vessels. 17 empires. Full-spectrum assault configuration." Ryland's chest tightened. Not even Earth's impossible ships could stand against that. Could they? But Sorrel's eyes met his, and she smiled, faint and strange. "Would you like to see what humanity truly is now?" She inhaled, closed her eyes. The air around her shimmered. The lights shifted. No, reality shifted. The tactical display flared to life. And Ryland gasped. The Terran fleet was expanding, new vessels emerging from nowhere. Not through drives, not through space, but into existence itself. Ship after ship blinked into being, not arriving, but becoming. Dozens became hundreds. Hundreds became thousands. The Terran fleet multiplied across the system like a thought made real. Each vessel shimmered with that same impossible design. Each one manned by volunteers, quantum avatars projected across unfathomable distances, ready to defend kin they'd never met. "We no longer move fleets through space," Admiral Sorrel explained. "We create them on demand. Our people project their consciousness wherever they're needed, fully aware, fully present." The Coalition Armada finally arrived. At its center loomed Supreme Commander Virex of the Dravik Dominion, his dreadnought flanked by the galaxy's most devastating warships. Across open frequencies, Ryland heard the cacophony of alien admirals locking into formation, issuing kill orders, coordinating what they believed would be Earth's annihilation. "This ends now," Admiral Sorrel said softly. She opened her eyes, and in them, Ryland saw why the galaxy feared Earth. These weren't the humans who had once begged for a seat at the council. The battle began, except it wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. The Armada unleashed everything. Graviton pulses, antimatter lances, dark energy torpedoes, weapons designed to fracture moons, melt continents, unravel quantum structures. It didn't matter. The Terran fleet glided through the assault like ghosts. Particle beams passed harmlessly through hulls. Missiles phased through targets as if hitting reflections on water. And when the Terrans answered, they didn't fire a single shot. Dr. Lyra Voss's voice crackled over the comms, collected, serene. "Beginning precision-scale quantum field revision. Targeting enemy weapon systems. No biological impact." On every screen, Ryland watched the enemy fleet unravel. Cannons fell silent. Shields dissolved. Reactors flickered and died. Engine trails faded to nothing. In moments, 800 warships, representing the power of 17 empires, became cold, drifting husks. "How?" Ryland whispered. "We rewrote local law sets," Sorrel said. "In the space around those vessels, the chain reactions that power combustion simply don't happen anymore." Then, a fractured voice cut across all frequencies, raw with panic. "What have you done to us?" Supreme Commander Virex shouted. "Our ships are dead. We're powerless." Sorrel's voice rose in reply, not shouted, but vast. And it echoed through every bridge, every cockpit, every mind. "You came to erase us because you feared what we've become. You were right to fear, but you didn't need to fight." Her words carried the weight of a civilization long denied. "For centuries, you enslaved our survivors. You took our worlds. You erased us from your records and called us extinct." She paused. The silence felt sacred. That ends now. A second voice joined, firm and unyielding. General Laron Vance, from one of the newly manifested Terran cruisers. You now have a choice, he said. Yield to what comes next, or stand against the new order we've begun, General Vance finished, and suffer the consequences of resistance. They had no choice. One by one, the ancient powers that had ruled the stars for millennia began to yield. The Dravic Dominion, the Chrysaline Accord, the Hive Clusters, all bent the knee. Each sovereign force, once mighty, now bowed before the quiet, undeniable force of Terran will. Admiral Sorrel turned toward Rylan. Her voice softened. Commander Kale, would you like to see your new home? Before he could respond, the view through the observation dome shifted, and his breath caught. Beyond the starseed, the Terran fleet had begun constructing something monumental. No tools, no raw materials, just thought. A radiant structure bloomed in space, a ring world of impossible scale, forming molecule by molecule under directed quantum control. Oceans shimmered, trees unfurled in seconds, parks, habitats, towering forests under vaulted skies. A sanctuary created mid-orbit in mere minutes. A new chapter for humanity, Sorrel said, smiling. The stars are ours now, but we're not here to conquer. We're here to restore. Rylan stared at the defeated fleets drifting in silence. Everything had changed. Humanity had returned to the galactic stage, and the galaxy would never be the same again. 6 months passed. Rylan Kale, no longer captain, but now Terran liaison to Kepler Station, stood on the promenade of the orbital cradle humanity had built. It was unlike anything that had existed before, a harmonious fusion of nature and post-physical design. It hummed in multiple realities, visible in one dimension, echoing in another. Below, the surface of Kepler 62F had transformed. Where once struggling settlements clung to survival, now radiant arcologies blossomed, alive with light and song. Rivers of silver water flowed beside bio-architected towers. Fields of fusion-grown crops waved under engineered skies. No hunger, no poverty, no disease. Dr. Serene Vale and her quantum medical teams had abolished illness, redesigned DNA, and extended healthy life to every citizen under Terran care. Nearby, Nara stood at her new station, no longer manning a simple comms deck, but interfacing directly with a Terran quantum mesh. Her eyes glowed softly, transmission active. Through that mesh, any mind could reach another instantly across the stars. It was more than communication. It was communion. Any updates from the distant branches? Rylan asked. Nara smiled, the light fading from her irises. New Aurelia reports stable terraforming. They've reached 50,000 colonists, preparing to host a new hub. She paused, and Astris Prime just launched its first dimensional scaffold. Full spectral synthesis. They're ready. Marek approached, looking reborn. No longer a tired engineer, now a node-linked architect of living systems. Earth had evolved, and it was bringing its children with it. Everywhere, something inside Marek had awakened. Since the Terran fleets arrived, his hands could interface with machines in ways he couldn't explain. Circuits responded to his touch. Systems whispered their problems into his thoughts. Designs once needing decades of research came to him in moments of stillness. The Ascendancy Academy is fully operational, he reported. Dr. Voss plans to begin interspecies orientation next week. Rylan nodded. The Academy was a cornerstone of Earth's greater vision, to carefully elevate select alien civilizations into the realm of heightened consciousness. The process wasn't universal. Not every species could withstand the metamorphosis, but those who could found themselves woven into something vast and beautiful. Dr. Elise Thane stepped onto the observation deck beside them. She had once been among the eldest survivors of Kepler's colony. Now post-expansion, she moved with ageless grace. The lines on her face were gone, and she could reshape molecular bonds with a mere glance. Her planetary research was already rewilding entire systems. "The VOC delegation has arrived," she said gently. "Admiral Sorrell requested your presence." Ryland still found it surreal. High Warden Vecth, once the architect of raids that had devastated human colonies, now served as Earth's envoy to his people. The VOC, once conquerors, had found deeper fulfillment in purpose than in domination. Together, they made their way toward the central assembly chamber. That chamber defied logic, half anchored in physical space, half phased into the quantum strata. Representatives from across the galaxy could attend in real time without leaving their homeworlds, each within their native atmosphere light years apart, yet present as one. Admiral Sorrell stood at the room's focal point, unchanged. Ryland now understood that time held no sway over her. She wore the form she chose, one shaped by will, not age. She offered him a warm nod. "Commander Kale, excellent timing. We're formalizing the inception of a new galactic accord." Ryland took his seat beside Warden Vecth and Crystallarch Jeanne of the Luminari. Jeanne's words entered his mind not as language, but as symphonic waves, harmonic vibrations forming thought. "The transition is proceeding more fluidly than anticipated," Jeanne said. "Our collective welcomes humanity's guidance." Vecth added his voice, low and resonant, his deference unmistakable. "The VOC Dominion seeks full integration into the Terran consciousness network. Our blades now yearn to shield, not strike." Sorrell inclined her head. "Dr. Voss's team will begin evaluations next cycle. But remember, the shift cannot be forced. Expansion of consciousness must emerge through alignment, not acceleration. Artificially induced awakening leads only to fragmentation." Ryland still marveled at it all. Months ago, they were clinging to survival, shadows scattered across hostile stars. Now, they were building a civilization of light. And somehow, through all the mystery and change, humanity had not only returned. It had become something entirely new. It was still hard for Kale to fully accept that the same species who once hunted humanity through the stars now petitioned for communion. But he had seen the shift with his own eyes. VOC warriors, still fierce, still proud, had shed their hunger for domination. What remained was courage without cruelty, strength repurposed for protection. As the summit continued, emissaries from across the galaxy shared revelations. The High Brood, once a relentless swarm, had restructured around symbiosis rather than conquest. The Nebulites, sentient vapor forms, had begun weaving ephemeral masterpieces from resonant fields, quantum art that required shared consciousness to even perceive. And civilizations that had waged endless war for generations now sat in mutual reflection, connected by Terran-guided harmonics. After the proceedings, Ryland found himself alone with Admiral Sorrell. They stood at the apex of the station's upper ring, gazing across the starfield. Earth shimmered in the distance, a living sapphire radiating strands of luminous energy. His heightened senses saw more than light now. He could feel the flow of thought across the system. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. "When humans were simpler?" Sorrell tilted her head, considering. "There was a purity in our limitations," she said. "A kind of innocence in not yet knowing how vast reality truly is." She motioned to the cosmos. "But I don't mourn what we left behind. Not anymore." Through Ryland's perception, the stars were no longer cold points of light. They were living nodes in a radiant web, threads of awareness flowing between them. He understood now what Earth had become. 3 centuries ago, humanity had been scattered and forgotten, tattered remnants adrift in a violent galaxy. Now, they were midwives to something greater. Below them, laughter echoed from the station's central atrium. Ryland watched as young humans and alien children played together, phasing in and out of dimensional layers, creating spontaneous games that defied classical physics. Among them was Nera's daughter, just 3 months old, already surpassing even Earth's earliest quantum pioneers in sensitivity and control. What comes next? Rylan asked. Admiral Sorrell's gaze drifted to the horizon, where galaxies drifted like lanterns on an ocean of mind. We evolve, she said. We guide. We help others rise beyond their limits. Then, after a pause, and maybe one day we shed the need for form entirely. Rylan thought of the long road behind them, from that rusting arc in a red sky to this, co-architects of a galactic awakening. It once would have seemed like fantasy, but so had Earth's return. Far below, the planet continued to blossom. Cities of radiant architecture spiraled upward in harmonic spirals. Trees of crystal light stretched across continents, rooted in one world, branching into others. And above it all, the sky had become a canvas, painted not with pigment, but with intention, flowing and reshaping with each shared breath of a collective soul. Admiral Sorrell placed a steady hand on Rylan's shoulder. You held the line, she said softly. When Earth fell silent, it was people like you who kept the spark alive. Without that, there would have been no one left to return to. Rylan's chest rose with a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Centuries of silent struggle finally lifted. And now, he asked, what's my place in this reborn galaxy? Her eyes sparkled with something deeper than light. Whatever you wish it to be, she replied. Chart the edge of creation. Help awaken species who are ready. Or stay here, bask in the world you help preserve. The choice is yours now. He turned back to the stars. But they weren't stars anymore. They were invitations, gateways, possibilities. For the first time in 3 centuries, there were no walls around what humanity could become. A race once dismissed as fractured and dying had become the architects of a new epoch. Earth hadn't returned to dominate. It had come to illuminate. And as the galaxy turned beneath them, woven with light, life, and mind, Rylan understood. The age of humanity had not merely begun. It had transcended. And it was more wondrous than anything they had ever dared to dream. Earth returned not with vengeance, but with vision. If this story moved you, imagine what comes next. Subscribe and join us as we explore the future humanity was never supposed to have.